we had set up this revival meetings almost over a year ago. We started planning this, and then I met with some of my friends who I knew from high school, and we started working as a little bigger group to try and really get these revival meetings going. But around end of June, July time, things started falling apart. The pastor left that church. The deacons asked us to stop being involved with our ministry with the church. And my faith in God, for about a day, because God is so good, got really tried. Because when you're trying to get somewhere that God told you you're going to go, and you get held up, it's hard to see past it, or why it happened, or how it's good. In fact, today, I'm trying to get here. We're supposed to start at noon, and I got held up at Shopping Save for an hour. Because the devil knew I had something to say for God today. And he said, I'm going to make that guy late. Maybe you won't get to share it. But God's got a word for this room. Okay? God's got a word for all of us. God's got a word for all of us. The week after we lost the church I'd been working in for 2 years trying to get this revival done. I had all my hope, all my faith that this was it. We were about to come into something wonderful. And it got stolen from me. From God. This was his revival, not mine. The week that happened, I spent one day in prayer. The next day, I go to my mailbox. After I prayed this prayer, God, if you want me to keep going, you got to show me where to go, how to do it, and who to do it with. The next day, I get to my mailbox, and there is a letter from someone. It says, "This is for you." And that's all it says. And it's a check for $600. It's a good check. Testimony House, in the history of our ministry, has only received 3 checks up to that point. Okay, so we're not, real blessed financially all the time, but we always have our needs met. And so I prayed over this check. I said, "Thank you for this check, Lord. What am I supposed to do with it?" And he was silent. But the next day came. And I get a call, or actually it was in my mailbox at work, from a woman I worked with. She had a conversation with somebody at my job. I worked at the Lifeway Christian stores. And on a day I wasn't at work, someone had a conversation about me with someone else. That person was Mr. Stephen Smith. And he said that he was just shopping for a book. But he felt the Lord tell him he needed to ask about someone to help him with his new church plant. And the most friendliest person in our store happened to be the one who walked right by him. And I thank God for her, because if I would have walked by Stephen, I promise you, I would have kept walking. I would not have stopped to say anything to him. Not because I don't like you, because I don't do that. Openly at my store, I do my job. I'm focused. And she gave him my name, and he started calling me. And I got these messages on my phone, and I'm like, who is this guy? Why is he calling me? And I finally call him back, and he tells me, I'm doing a church plant in Ferguson. And I was curious if your ministry would be interested in working with us to do that. And my spirit leapt so tall, because I'm getting a call out of the blue from a guy I've never met, who doesn't know me, doesn't know my small ministry, because God told him to ask someone in the store, and God gave him my name, because he knew the connections can glorify God. So he invited me over to his church plant meeting, where I gave my testimony. I told him about my addictions. I told him what our ministry does. And we decided that we would form a partnership. Now, we didn't know what the details of that were going to be. We didn't know if it was going to be something long-term or short-term, or how involved each of us would be. But we made that decision, that choice, because faith is a choice. You decide to have faith. You decide if this is the road you want to take. You decide if going after God's will or your own will is your decision. And so I decided that this was from God, and I wanted to chase after it. 3 days later, he had a Bible study. And the place that he had been meeting to have his Bible study was in another building. But he calls me the day of the Bible study and says, "John, I'm so sorry. We lost our building. We can't use it tonight. It's been shut down. And I don't know what to do. I think about canceling it." And then he says, "No, can't cancel it. I gotta have it. I gotta have this meeting. I gotta have it." He said, I'm gonna make some calls. I'm gonna call you back." And so we did. A couple hours later, he calls me back and says, "I've got a man. I know a pastor named Charles O'Shea, and he's going to open up this building to us, and he's going to open us and let us come into it." And so, 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, less than a week removed from the church I've been working in for 2 years, kicking us out, the pastor leaving, all the doors seem to be closing, and you go, "God, you told me this revival was going to take place in September. We're a couple weeks away." This is, I don't know. But I wasn't planning on stopping, but I didn't know how it was going to work. Tuesday, we get to this building I've never been to before. Never been inside it. Never met anybody I walked inside to meet, except for Stephen. And they have this wonderful Bible study. And Stephen preaches out of the Word, and his people are excited to hear him share the message. And he asked me to get up and talk briefly. And I had no idea what I was going to say. I didn't even know if I was going to talk that night. And I began to speak. And I began to share the vision that I had for revival, about 20,000 lives being saved, about the city being transformed by Christ, about our hearts being transformed by Christ, and about how I thought and how God showed me through a revelation, like he did to Paul, that these things were going to take place. And I was having faith for them. After I finished, Pastor Lachey, almost immediately, at least to my recollection, is like, "That's it. I want to be a part of that." And he said, "Yes, let's do that. Yes." And Pastor, as I was finishing up, he says, "God gave me a word." Now you have to remember, we just met. I had not told him about our revival or when. God told me it was supposed to take place in September. And Stephen, he comes from behind the pulpit where he's standing. He says, "God gave me a word. We're supposed to have this revival, and it's supposed to happen in September." You can't make that up. A guy I just met has the same word from God that I did. We're supposed to have a Bible study in a building that gets shut down the day it's happening, so that we can get forced into another building where another man of God can say, "I've been waiting on a revelation from God for a long time, and now I've got my marching orders, and this is it." You can't bring people together like that through your own effort. A year ago, maybe a little less than that, we sat in that room praying for a revival, a small group of us, and we prayed for racial reconciliation. And I'm seeing a mixed, diverse group, not just in this room the past 3 nights. We've had a mix. And if I'd had that revival at that other church, I promise you, none of you would have been there. But that's okay. Because God knew, before all of this happened, what his plans were for us. Paul wrote that in the word we just read. God knew what he had for me before I knew it. And so here we are standing today. You want to hear testimony about how God works in people's lives. He brings people together that would never be in the same room at the same time through supernatural, miraculous ways. I can't explain it. I can't tell you that I did it, but it happened anyway. Because what we're doing here is special. Because we all have Christ in here, and we all have the desire to not call anybody else like Paul. We don't want to ask anybody else if it's the right thing. We don't need to call everybody and say, should we be sharing the gospel with our city? No, we're just going to run. Paul ran to Damascus. We're running into St. Louis. We're running into Ferguson. We're going to stomp on the head of the enemy. We're going to lift up the spirit of evilness that's been over this city for such a long time. We're going to come together and multiply our prayers, our desires to see God transform a broken city. And when the world looks at us a period of time from now and sees restoration, and sees hope, and sees rebuilding, and sees people who were once killing each other, helping each other, and when they say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? The only explanation will be Jesus Christ. The identity, and this is one of the things I really want people to understand, is that the vision of this revival is that we want to change the identity of this city. We don't want to be known because we got an arch or because we got a good baseball team. If I say the word St. Louis to someone who does not live here, a time from now, I want them to think, oh, that's the city where Jesus showed up. Amen. That's the place something happened that was so incredible they can't explain it. That's what we want to see happen here. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it can. And don't be surprised if one day we show up at these meetings and people just started driving. In fact, God gave me a vision a long time ago. You know that scene in Field of Dreams at the end? When the cars start pulling up, and they said, if you build it, they will come. Joe spoke for 2 days about how you don't fall into love, you build love. You build a marriage, you build a ministry. If you build it, they will come. And we are going to build this revival. We're going to build up the foundation of Jesus Christ in this city, and he's going to be lifted up and glorified for all to see. I'm thankful that you're here. Come in agreement with me and with Christ that something is about to take place that we've never seen before. And I promise you that God will have his way with us, and we will all be changed. Our transformations will be so apparent. I cannot wait to see how he touches all of us. God is so good. Yes?
Amen.